This is Mikey Mason, and you're listening to Why We Game.
I'm Brodor, and this is Why We Game. My guest today is the illustrious Mike Wood. For those of you that live outside of the St. Louis area, you may not know Mike unless you've been to a convention and seen him barking and hustling. But if you're a St. Louisan, Mike is a staple in the gaming industry. He's known by everyone. He has been everywhere, and he's a hustler. He has always worked some angle to be in the gaming industry professionally, or pseudo professionally, if you will.
Yes. The pseudo professionally.
Pseudo
professionally.
Yeah, pseudo. I got that from my brother somewhere. I don't remember why, but he said pseudo one day, and it just kind of stuck with me.
He was yelling at you during a role-playing game. Because I know your brother. I met your brother before I actually met you. I've known your brother. I probably met your brother almost 9 years before I even met you. Yelling at somebody at a World War II game at a convention in Kansas.
He was not. My brother would not yell at someone that he does not know personally or who has greatly offended him in some fashion.
Oh, I think I did. I think I commented on the sculpts of the figures, and because I can't keep my mouth shut, so I said something about potato hand figures.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the things that I've always adored about you is, and I don't know if you're on the spectrum or if you have some glitch in your brain where you don't have a filter.
I don't have an off button.
But yeah, you've never held your tongue. Like sometimes, oftentimes to the detriment of those around you.
Yes. I've seen the door open, the door close, and me step through it. So, and you're kind of the same way.
We're a divider of people.
But I always tell my wife, I'm always thinking of the conversation 3 sentences ahead of what I'm talking about. So imagine what I did not say.
Oh, well, see, that's funny because I don't know. I'm like you in that I do indeed have a filter. I mean, people have asked me, do you ever hold your tongue? And I'm like, constantly.
I'm always thinking when somebody's talking, I'm thinking about a sentence that I want to say, and I'm like, how do I want them to answer? And if I don't want to go down that way, we don't ever go down that way. So. Yeah. I can direct the conversation.
Yeah, I just, any which way. You have been somebody that I have known for years, professionally as retailer and consumer, but also professionally as you are a guy who teaches people to paint and does painting for money. We worked together briefly, or you were there for a while.
We've worked there. As I say, if I get a job and Mike shows up, I've got about 3 months left. I'm hoping that after this podcast, I will probably get fired from my job. But no, I've suggested you for every job that you've got, those 2 jobs that you've gotten hired
for.
Well,
that's awful kind of you. But we worked together I was there for about a week at Troll Forge Miniatures.
It was incredible.
And then we both worked at Miniature Market, and I came on to Miniature Market, and then you left Miniature Market.
Yes.
I guess by left, I mean you were shown the door.
I was absolutely shown the door, but one case I left the bathroom and 2 French people fired me. And I mean, they literally, I should take it as a compliment. They flew from France to fire, they flew, from France to fire me.
Well, let's put
the only person they fired me.
Well, now hold on a second.
You had a cup of coffee and you got shown up, but you did drive me home from the day I got fired.
It was very surreal. Let's put a pin in that. Let's talk about, so Mike, you're 44.
Yes, I'm 44 years old.
You are enormous. What, you're 7 feet tall?
I'm 6'4". I'm about 335 after breakfast. I was born in the 70s. My name's Mike. My parents hate me. As all 45-year-old people named Mike, and they're born in the 70s, their parents hate them.
Well, that's that wisdom, which I totally steal from you, right? I mean, if I recall to give you credit, I try to remember to give you credit anyway. But you also have the great line that Precious is the best first date movie.
Precious is the first date movie because you will look so good no matter how big of a dick you are. And the bad thing is I've given that advice to guys who really didn't need that advice because they were going to strike out anyways.
I just love the idea of sitting down in the movie theater with this potential romantic, involvement, this entanglement, if you will. and just washing this thing and crossing my fingers and just silently hoping that by comparison, this girl's going to want to fuck me because I'm not Precious's dad.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to come off as creepy meat hands trying to get on top of, it's horrible. I actually went on a date one time where we saw Castaway. Imagine sitting there in utter silence.
Yeah, well, and I'm not saying anything original, but who's fighting off that island to get back to Helen Hunt?
Oh God, no, nobody.
Not for me. When did you start in the actual gaming hobby?
Okay, so I've had a full-time job since I was 11.
So there are laws against that.
No, there's not in the comic book industry. I worked at my local comic book store. Every day I would get home from school. I'd do my homework. By 4:00, I was riding my bike 2 miles to a South County local comic book store that my friends ran. And
so this is early 80s-ish.
Late 80s.
Late 80s.
So you're talking 88, 89. I was really deep in the comic industry. I would be buying comics and selling comics every weekend. I'd go to a show or convention. That's how I met all my friends, because I started out where I'd help a guy with a booth. Then he's like, hey, you can have 4 feet of the table. Oh, you can have now we got our own table. So I'd make money like that.
You've always been hustling in some facet of the secondary market.
Absolutely. I've always been, my mom will tell you this, I learned it from my grandma. I've always gone to garage sales and flip stuff since I was 8. I've ran garage sales since I was 10. I've always, stuff that interests me, I can always find a way to hone in on it and find a way to make a little money. I've never made a tremendous amount of money in my life. So my hobby had to always pay for itself. I couldn't be, I'm going to go spend $200 on brand new comic books or miniatures or whatever. I'll just take it out of my paycheck. I was married when I was 19. I had my first child when I was 22. I was divorced at 25. I got remarried when I was 26, and then I have 2 children with my current wife, Paula. I've got 1 kid graduating college, 1 kid going into college, and 1 kid going into high school. There's never enough money for anything. So you always have to, I've always found a way to make money to support my hobby.
You've always made money to support your hobby.
Oh yeah.
But you've also, ever since I've known you, you've always made, the hobby's always been a revenue stream for you
absolutely,
as well.
Absolutely. The problem is I want to make so much stuff that if I just made stuff and it sat around, I would run out of room instantly. There's kind of a philosophy. You either have the perfect balance of time and money, or you don't have enough time and you have a lot of money, or you have a lot of time and no money. I've had years where I've been unemployed. I was self-employed since I was 18 through 38. And then I've kind of just bounced around to things, but I had years where I didn't make a ton of money. So yeah, if we needed Christmas money, I'd paint 2 armies for guys and boom, we'd have money for Christmas. I would do it like that. But if I wanted something, like I wanted a new 40K army or whatever, I'd find 2 guys to paint their stuff and make terrain or whatever and sell it at we'd always have great flea markets in St. Louis. How I got into the miniature hobby is one day I was going to a visitation to the high school I was going to go to, 1989. I walked into who would become one of my best friend, Ken's shop called the Hobby Shop. Not a great name, but it was a hobby shop. It was in a corner shop, in the city, but he was the largest in the Midwest, the largest carrier of historical miniatures, which some of your listeners might not know. We used to play games about history, not just fantasy. And I've always loved Napoleonics. I always loved World War II, kind of from a modeling standpoint, because that's what you would model. I walked in there and I saw magazines, I saw books, I saw miniatures, and I saw 3 guys who I was kind of perusing. They're like, you should show up on Saturday. I'm like, okay. I had my mom drop me off. I took the bus and I had my mom pick me up, and I played 15 millimeter Napoleonics for 8.5 hours. I fell in love with it. I've never taken any art classes I've been around artists all my life, but I somehow can inherently paint my own style, but I can inherently paint. So it started from there. I'd play 15 millimeter Napoleonics, and then we did some World War II stuff.
And how old were you then?
I was 13.
Oh yeah, because we jumped from the 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Now we're at 12-year-old.
Yeah, 13.
So it wasn't role-playing games that got you. It was historical miniatures.
I did some role-playing D&D in grade school. Actually, a person we know, you know Tim Simpson? He's a big War Machine guy, but he's written a bunch of articles for Privateer Press and in their magazines. I was in 5th grade with his sister, and he was in 3rd grade, and I started teaching kids how to role play. So I've always kind of taught people how to do stuff. So I would buy books from the older kids, and I've, a smattering of, I'm not a very good role player. My wife is, better. She's been in a game she's been in a game since we've, met almost, 20 years, same game. So yeah, I did a little role playing. I loved fantasy. I loved Lord of the Rings. I loved all that kind of stuff. I loved anything that was visually appealing.
But modeling,
because it was a visual medium. Role playing, not very visual. Unless you put out the dungeons and everything, and then I don't think you're role playing. I just think you're just running through a dungeon.
Well, then we don't have time for that argument, because this show's not about how wrong you are. This show's about you and
how right I am.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, I started playing, and now granted, I'm 13 years old. The guys I'm playing with are in their 30s. Some of the best.
Anybody ever try to sink a digit?
No, I did not win, I didn't get a free bike that year, as they say. But I mean, I just met the nicest guys, and I'm like, wow, these guys, and they did not care that I did not know the rules, because it was, back then rules were complicated. You had, if you played Starfleet, which
wait, these 30-year-old late 80s grognards.
Oh God, long hair.
Were welcoming. They didn't shit on you for not knowing the rules.
They probably,
and nobody tried to put a finger in your butt.
Yeah, they shit on me, but I mean,
but in a loving way, like you do a little brother.
I was also at 13. I was also 6'4". So, I mean, I was taller than most of them and goofy.
Oh my God, just full of piss and vinegar, raging hard on.
Yeah.
I bet they were the ones afraid of getting raped.
Probably.
Yeah.
But so we started, and then Second Edition 40K came out. And oh my God, the box set and the static Space Marines with the clip-on guns and the orcs, the one pose orcs, the one pose Gretchen, and
with those stupid hand axes.
Yes,
and oh my God, those models suck.
And then the punch out dreadnought that was on a card, because they hadn't made a dreadnought model yet. So yeah, I met the greatest painter I will have ever met. If everybody now follows guys who do the GW style of line work and everything, I met the most phenomenal painter, and his name was Jim Borsch. We called him the doctor or the surgeon, because every time he painted, he had gloves on. Every week he would show up with 2 new models that were meticulously painted down to the eyeballs. He did a Legion of the Damned squad that should have won the Golden Demon in 1996, but it got beat by a guy who painted up the original metal Dryads 2 nights before. And they're like, ooh, somebody painted up something new. We're going to give him the Slayer sword, even though Jim did an incredible Legion of the Damned army. So yeah, I started playing 40K. I traveled the country playing 40K. I have played back when they had grand tournaments, and these were big events. You didn't, back before the internet, you would get the White Dwarf, and it would have a coupon in it, a little thing that you would mail in with your name. Some grand tournaments only had 40 entries. Some had 80, depending on what was popular at the time. So if you wanted to go to Chicago, you're competing with everybody in Chicago and everybody around there to get your little coupon book in. So I would get, working at a gaming store, I get the White Dwarf the night before we put it on the shelves. I would cut it out. I would put my money order, not PayPal, money order into it, overnight it to Chicago. It cost me like $30 to overnight this envelope. So the day the White Dwarf hit the thing, they would have all 5 of my entries to I've been to grand tournaments in Chicago, Toronto, Dallas, Glen Burnie, Maryland, California, and Colorado. Those were these were not tournaments you went to. You stayed at the hotel with everybody who played. You ate dinner with them. It was incredible. And what caught me, again, being a painter, the level of attention to detail of the models that were painted. And I did very well. And I went to the first one. My model sucked. I went to the second one. I had worked all year on this army. And now you see people with display bases and everything, that go to tournaments. I started that. I will not lie.
I have an aunt named Donna who swears that she created the joke, the only kind of wood that doesn't float is Natalie wood. Now,
is that like the person that always says that they've invented the Mexican soul food place called Nacho Mama's?
I have not heard that, but yes, to claim to be the person to have created display basing, I'm gonna
1997.
You can give me an anecdote, but I'm gonna need proof.
Oh, I'll show you in the White Dwarf, because there was only one picture of the guy who won Best Painted Best Army, and that was mine, because I built an entire castle setting for a 300 piece.
Fuck off. Is this real?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I built a 300 piece Empire army. And for people playing Age of Sigmar now, that's 300 miniatures. I used the old plastic fortress. I built a frame out of wood when I could have just went and bought a frame. Cause back then, again, you have to figure everything out. It was 3 feet wide by 3 feet, or by 2.5 feet thing. It was huge. It weighed 60 pounds. And I carted that from table to table. And I swear to God, they asked me, why did you build this? I'm like, so when you came and judged me, I can put the models exactly the way I wanted, exactly the way I wanted you to look at them. And it was about the presentation. I lost every single game by at least the full victory. I mean,
well, and that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, because in all the time that I've known you, I did not know that you were that active in the competitive circuit for 40K. Because I've never
40K and fantasy. My first love was always fantasy.
But I've never seen you be an aggressive competitive player.
I am not. I will admit now, I'm a horrible player. I only go to the tournaments because that's the only place that what I do will get recognized. I played War Machine, a lot, and I've won 2 hardcore. When you play in the hardcore events, these are the guys that are they will put their boot up your ass. As War Machine
you can say whatever you want.
Play with a pair, which I think is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. All leads to dudes who got their
play so obnoxiously that you drive away a new fan base. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I used to play in a bunch of events that were at your store or the fancy shop. I used to be the only person with a painted army. Because again, War Machine, it doesn't matter if it's painted. They prided themselves on, I don't have to paint my stuff. I showed up with a fully painted army, Cato army that you sold me. That's the pride of I still got it in my display case. It was the greatest buy ever.
If I did assembly and you did painting, we would take
phenomenal.
over the earth. Yeah.
Cause I cut corners when I assemble. Like I'll be like, I can hide that mold line with something.
Yes,
like
I want you to be able to pick up this Khador Warjack and kill your younger brother Abel and be shamed by God, but that model is still assembled.
The best one I have is your, I think it's the Drago with the skull head.
Oh, that I converted.
I've won more painting contests and won more swag with that that cost me to buy the entire army.
Yeah, I don't remember what I did. I took one of those Khador or whatever guys that are with the gun shield thing.
Yes.
And I took an old metal skull from like an undead ogre bit or something. From some old Reaper pack and just Dremeled it out and made that the head. That was one of my favorite little sort of
we're going to talk
cheap conversions I've done.
We're going to talk about that, about being a converter in a second. But yeah, I don't get competitive over the games. I could care less. I'm there to have fun, but I'm also there to show what I can do. A lot of guys that I've played with who are way better painters than me now, but kind of inspired them to do stuff. A guy early on who I could see was a phenomenal, Chris Surrey. He's won a lot of trophies, a phenomenal painter. But the year so you go to these hardcore events and it's a really competitive, really uber. There's only 4 trophies. There's either the overall winner. There's the person who's killed the most models but did not win overall. There's the quickest caster kill, which is God, Jesus. Oh, I killed you in 7 minutes. Nice game. I mean, I would be across the table.
Body count is kind of a fun award. But fastest caster kill,
so
that's a dick measuring contest right there.
You have 3 of the 3 things, and then you have Master Craftsman. And I won that 2 years in a row, just on the sheer craziness of how I built an entire trench system for your Khador army that I painted. An entire working trench system that was almost 360 degrees all the way around. It spun. It had everybody was recessed based on the trench. It looked phenomenal. I still have it, still sitting in my basement, but all these tournaments and everything is just a get to be able to show off what I do. Cause there are no art galleries showing miniatures. I guess now all of my, I don't play I don't like playing. I'll be honest with you. I don't actually like sitting there for 4 hours and playing a game. It's kind of boring to me. I'd rather sit there for 4 hours and paint and create. That's why I've kind of moved away from gaming. So I started 40K and then I got into all these things. I met you and then my gaming interest kind of took a different route where I started making stuff and painting stuff for people. And the act of actually having it done and photographed was all I cared about. You know, after it was done, I really didn't, it just goes up on a shelf, you know, it's like box games or books. They just sit on a shelf, you know, but I like being surrounded by that stuff.
Oh, amen, right? Because there's a magic of walking into whatever that special space is for you and seeing those things on the shelf. Not only do you have a sense of pride in its completion, but you get to, it's almost like a murder trophy, right? You get to sniff those panties and just relive. I know I'm wretched.
No, that's,
but it is a thing that you get to look at and relive an experience that brought you pleasure.
Yeah. And it's the sense of, I built that. I figured out how to do it. So I veered off. I kind of in between jobs at a time. I met a sculptor, who we both know. Named Ed, a phenomenal sculptor.
I'm brokenhearted that he left the hobby altogether.
Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't a great situation. Just the dynamics of what we were doing and trying to accomplish did not work it was bad timing for both of us.
Right. But anyway, you were saying, so you met Ed.
I met Ed through a sculpting class that you gave. And he that Fantasy Shop hosted, but Ed actually was our teacher. Yeah, Ed was our teacher, and he taught me, you, and Stephanie Huffager.
Yeah,
the three people who Stephanie's a phenomenal painter.
Yeah, no, she's excellent.
And I met him, and he was I think I kind of put him back because you had given me some models like 2 days before. He dropped off because he knew of me and he knew of my painting class. He kept dropping off models for Mike. Somehow you kept holding them because your name was Mike.
There was never a wood or anything on them.
That's because he didn't know my last name.
So they're like, hey, dude, Ed dropped these off for you. Okay. Yeah. I love that. I always toy soldiers. Thanks,
Ed.
The
person who,
I feel bad about that.
No,
not bad enough, not bad enough to dig them out and give them to you.
No. I have enough stuff. I showed up to the thing with a couple of his models already painted and like painted on display basis. And so we talked, and 8 months later, he's like, you tell me, you're like, hey, you remember that Ed guy? He's looking for somebody to help him cast. I'm like, oh, my job I used to I owned a windshield repair company, and my arms were broken. I was broken. He's like, he's looking for someone to work part-time. I'm like, cool. I can work part-time and do the same thing. I can schedule everything around it. So I showed up to his basement one day. There was another guy named Brian. We were working on Impact Miniatures' first Kickstarter, the chibi one. I worked there for 4 hours while they showed me how to pour. The next day I worked 8, and then I worked 40 plus hours every week since. We started in his basement. We eventually moved into a casting studio.
How long are you there with Ed and Trollforge?
I was there from the second week he opened it up till we completed Raging Heroes' first Kickstarter. I think it's an accomplishment that I have personally overseen or casted the majority of $1.5 million worth of miniatures.
That's a very impressive.
I mean, yeah, it kind of, when we did Raging Heroes' first Kickstarter, if you're on Raging Heroes' third Kickstarter, I sincerely apologize. You will never get that. You will never get that stuff. And it's not even casting. It's printed card from China that you'll never get that. So yeah, I did their first Kickstarter, which was 270.
Wait. Why are they never getting, so what's coming from China and why are we never getting it?
So they did their first two Kickstarters were, the toughest girls in the galaxy, female chicks with guns, basically complete rip-offs.
Benoit, but, I'm sorry. I interrupted.
There were Sisters of Battle proxy models because at the time Games Workshop could literally care less about Sisters of Battle. So Benoit is a phenomenal artist. Again, artist, not who will, and this gets back into our topic. We're going to talk about 3D printing. So he's a phenomenal artist. All the models were 3D, were rendered in 3D.
Yeah, they were sculpted 3D.
Yeah, they were sculpted 3D, printed 3D. That leads to something that a traditional sculptor will never do. A traditional sculptor generally knows how things are made and casted, so he will make stuff that is possible to be casted. 3D artists right now can make anything, any way, any pose they want in a non-physical thing. You cannot green stuff the things they make. It's technically impossible to sculpt the way they draw, especially the way Benoit makes stuff. Thin, and you knew this, thin guns, thin legs, splitting nonstop, especially. We were doing an incredibly new technique at the time. We were spin casting resin.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to shit on Raging Heroes too badly because they're not here to defend themselves. But I will say there were many mistakes made on that end, and I'm bitter But,
This was the first time they'd ever done anything large scale. They're a boutique company. As they told me, they want to be the Apple of games. They wanted to make, when they made a model, they wanted to make 25 of them, charge $100 a piece, and that was it. They weren't used to, let's make 10,000 figures in a week the way we were. I mean, their first, the worst time I ever had was they had 7 models, which were their promotional models. They were getting behind on the Kickstarter really bad because, again, they're artists. They're not in a production facility. One person was numbers, one person was art. And the one person with numbers was not good communicating with us, and the one person with art didn't communicate at all. So we had 6 figures, and they had 3,000 backers. What's 6 figures times 3,000? It's 24,000 figures, give or take. I think we sent them 28,000 figures in 7 days. I worked 20 hours a day humping a spin caster, literally standing as much as I could. And when spin casting resin, it's basically like spin casting metal, except you cut the mold slightly differently. And instead of pouring liquid metal in there, you're putting a fast setting 2-part hydroscopic resin into it. It fills the mold, you pop it out, just like plastic injection, but just with...
So for people who don't know, with plastic injection, the steel molds are going to get
The steel molds will
together.
clamp, you'll have a screw, and it will ramrod. The machines I work with at my work are 70 tons, 100 tons. That's how much force they will clamp the mold together and shoot hot liquid into it. And it'll push it till there's no more space to push, and then it cools, and then it opens up.
With spin casting, though, you have a rubber mold, and it's a centrifuge.
Yeah, and it's just like if you've ever seen jewelry casting or anything, or broken arm casting. It's literally a washing tub that spins around 750 revolutions per minute, and the ones we were using and the ones I was using at Miniature Market were from the 70s. I mean, this is a very old technique, but used with resin, because at the time metal was like $30 or $20 a pound.
So you did this for Trollforged Miniatures, but then you also did it for Miniature Market.
Yeah, so I left Trollforged, or was shown the door at Trollforged. Either way, I mean, yeah. I love Ed. I love that whole company.
Fired is certainly laid off.
I was laid off.
Is a bullshit phrase, right?
I was fired. Yeah. I was fired. Me and Ed at the time were having a very difficult situation. Again, I was married with 2 kids. I was working for nothing. You know, it was a bad time for us all. He was going through his issues. I was going through my issues, and our issues were butting heads dramatically. I was not happy. I love the people I work with, but the situations I was put into with those people were not good. I was the only person who ever ran a company at the company. You know, I was the only one who's ever made payroll at the company. I ran the whole shop, and at the time I left, I was making $11.50 an hour, you know, so I was working 60 hours a week just to make ends meet. Again, I love Ed. I wish I could work with him again, because he's my brother. He's my bigger, older brother, my bigger, older, stronger brother. I love him to death. And I love Devin, and I love Luke, and I love Fat Pat. And the guy who runs it now, I tried to hire, but Home Depot got to me first, who was he works his ass off.
You're talking about Nick?
Nick works his ass off. And I know he struggled with stuff to keep it going, and with him finding Tim and finding a bunch of other companies to work with and still keeping all that insanity going is incredible.
It's almost like exactly what I told Ed and Murray what I wanted to do the week that I worked there was, you know.
Oh, you opened your mouth and I could see it was downhill. He's like, maybe we should charge them for these little baggies we're giving them for free.
Well, no, I mean, but that's why Ed brought me in, is because, you know,
we were hemorrhaging money.
The only guy who had any experience in running business is working 60 hours a week running the spin casting. You can't do the books or the HR or anything. Yeah, well, I know it's very comical to think that I'm the HR guy, but I was.
You didn't even get to see the good stuff in the HR. I saw so much cack in that place. It was amazing. And it was from the boss.
But the thing is that, yeah, I mean, I was very open. I was very forthright with Ed and Murray about what I wanted to see the company be. And that was dangerous. And Murray said, get out.
When I heard you were available, and not because you were like, hey, I got some free time. You're like, no, I think you gave the double barrels to the old company.
I did. Yeah, no, for sure.
And, you know, I mean, I understand why, you know, both you butted heads with a boss like I have all of my life. That's why I work for myself. The last job interview I had, I was 12 and I got an interview at the comic book store. I've never had a job interview in my life. I just kind of wander into places and they give me a job. So yeah, I worked with them. And then, so I left, Trollforge. I worked for my friend in the disc golf industry as a plastic injection mold processor. Eventually, I do all of his retail sales, his website, his Instagram. I do all of that. I do all the marketing. It's a very small company. Again, I don't like big companies. I'm not good at that. Then I leave that to take a job with my friend Joe at Miniature Market, which is America's largest gaming website.
Go back to episode number 2. I actually interviewed the owner, Steve Lucinski, but yeah, the only people bigger than him.
Wayland Games.
Is it Wayland? I thought it was Cool Mini or Not. Maybe
Cool Mini or Not,
they're larger in Magic.
Yeah, they're large. But Wayland Games is the other one only because they're on the other side of the planet. So we were, they had purchased a game called All Quiet on the Martian Front. It had completely failed. This was
15 millimeter Wells.
Yeah.
Martians invade America.
It was incredible. And this was kind of the Wild West of Kickstarter when they ran this. Impact had this problem too. All companies 4 years ago had this problem. They kept, Kickstarter, I'm going to raise $20,000. If I put out a new miniature, I can raise $22,000, $24,000. Then they realize they turn around and they've got to make 100 miniatures that they don't even have started yet. And their date was 6 months from now, but they can't tell their people they're going to push it back. Everybody was greedy back then with Kickstarter. Everybody. Kickstarter now is smoothed out and it runs so, you can barely back a bad project on Kickstarter. But back then, again, I've worked for a company that will never deliver a Kickstarter. So we purchased All Quiet on the Martian Front from the guy, which pissed off a lot of people because there was a lot of backers who did not get all of their product. And we'd go to shows and like, I backed it. Can I get that Overseer? And I'm like, no, you have it's $100. They have to pay me. So
yeah, the thing that people don't understand, and I'm not an attorney, so don't take this as legal gospel, but the thing that people don't understand, and this has happened to Miniature Market multiple times, where a Kickstarter will go tits up, it's dead, it's not going to deliver, but so they go bankrupt or file for whatever legal protections they want, then they sell the product.
Yeah, they sell what's ever left and whatever money they can get. And a bank contacted Steve only because they did a Google search for miniature, and Miniature Market was the first one that came up. So Joe drives to Pennsylvania in a box truck, loads up the entire contents of their locked warehouse. I mean, we had medical records, we had Social Security, we had everything and he brought everything back, and he's like, we need to start making this. So he had some shitty molds that some other company made that I tried to work with. I eventually horned in. I'm like, I need to buy this equipment that I knew I could use from Trollforge. I had all the knowledge. We started producing it again. We started making the metals. It never sold really well because nobody cared. So there was 300 backers to it. They raised like $10,000. They needed $30,000 to make all the stuff. He left, the owner of it left a trail of.
So it did not fund successfully?
No, it funded successfully. He underestimated grossly because again, he's an artist.
I gotcha. Okay.
The steel molding alone for the plastic parts, cost him $300,000. He owes some guy in California $300,000, which is why we could never get the molds to make, if we could have got the molds to make the plastic kits, that would have never left. We would have just had to make the plastic kits because we could sell those all day long. They cost, a sprue costs 10 cents. You sell for $20. There's no brain power in that. So we tried to make that work. We got new sculpts. I finally got the Overseer out. It wasn't up to my liking, but it was in the time crunch. Again, I was working for Steve. Everything is numbers. Nothing is artistic.
And, and again, I have tremendous respect for the man. Did everything needed to be done yesterday?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really hard when you're doing something creative.
Yeah. And I would be getting, the Overseer mold was not a traditional sculpt. It was plastic tube, ball bearings, and some green stuff. So I couldn't vulcanize. I vulcanized one part right away and it was gone. I had to resculpt it. I've resculpted that thing 3 times. I got it to where it works and it looks okay. And if you put a little effort into it, but people don't put effort into anything anymore. And it was only $100. It was ridiculously cheap. So that failed. We had to scramble really quick. So what does everybody need for D&D? terrain.
You need that sweet, sweet dungeon dressing,
Yes,
man.
we do. And thank God for Joe. He tap danced. He did the shuffle, and we came up with 6 sculpts that we went to my first Gen Con with. And I made probably an 8-foot table worth of buckets of terrain by myself in 2 weeks. I think I made like 15,000 pieces of terrain. We did very well.
So you've transitioned then. Miniature Market has transitioned from doing this Martian miniatures game to focusing on terrain and dungeon dressing for miniatures.
Yeah, generic terrain. You could buy a barrel from us. You could buy a bucket. You could buy a treasure chest, a well, a wall, a tree, all a la carte. Nobody was really doing it to that extent at the time. This was like 3 years ago. When I say we did this, Joe was the upfront person. I was in the back and in a closet. We had transformed a 8-foot by 12-foot room into a casting studio. I had 2 spin casters, a vulcanizer. I had everything in one spot, and I would make every week for 2 years. Every 2 weeks, we released 5 new pieces. And to say that's an accomplishment, they were 3D printed. I would have to make a master mold, spin the master mold, then make 5 production molds, cut them, and then spin enough for the Friday release to hopefully hold us over. All the while restocking as it started 17, 34. You know, we got to the point where we had 156 SKUs, and I had Sean spin casting, me making molds. I had a guy drop casting. I had a guy sanding, all in the space that you could fit a bedroom into.
I can tell you, I mean, I saw the room many times. It was snug.
Yeah, it was snug. And I'm, like I say, a giant person. We had another giant person.
Well, and you're working with all those fucking chemicals and
the ventilation wasn't, and
you're sanding. You've got a fucking belt sander in there. Resins.
I had a belt sander in
shit. Yeah.
And then we eventually moved it to another room where I had a guy standing in there for 8 hours a day sanding. And you think this pandemic gas mask thing is a problem? You people wearing these who don't want to wear your cotton mask. This dude was in a full respirator, leather apron, sanding on a belt sander, little pieces, small, as big as your thumb. He was, I lost nails. We had a containment system that he had to have, it was so loud he had to wear noise canceling headphones over earplugs. I luckily worked with some of the greatest people, and he was definitely on the spectrum, because if I told him to do something, impossible. Could not do it. If I left him a shelf full of 10,000 pieces that I need sanded by tomorrow, not a problem. As long as I didn't talk to him. It's great. And so, yeah, my friend Joe, we worked there, and eventually got to the point where we were making so many figures. We had sold off the All Quiet on the Martian Front to a gaming company in Portland who stuck me, they're a bunch of jackasses. Let's schedule out 2 weeks. This was after I left Miniature Market. Schedule out a week so you could fly up to Portland and train all of our people. We'll pay you whatever you want. Because I was going to train them how to do everything. I thought my time and effort was worth about $2,500 plus a hotel and staying and do it. Oh, well, that's great. We'll do it. Yeah. I took a week off work and they stuck me, and they're horrible.
Has that game gone anywhere though?
No, it has gone nowhere. It's been 2.5 years and it's gone nowhere. They keep showing sculpts. The problem is they're like every game designer, no money.
Yeah. I mean,
they need $100,000 to revamp that game. They ain't got 2 nickels to rub together.
If anything ever needed a rules revision, a firm overhaul for a second edition.
Yeah. I always tell people that they go, oh, you've done a lot in the game industry. I'm like, I've produced a game that Rick Priestley wrote the rules to. And that's awesome. And
yeah, that's a fucking claim to fame, right?
So yeah, I've worked with Rick Priestley on a game. Yeah, he was a hired gun, didn't write any of he wrote the rules and was completely rewritten by the guy who ran the Kickstarter. So again, I hope he cashed that check.
But is the gaming industry really like Hollywood in that sense? Does shit really get rewritten that regularly?
I assume so.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the things that I want to explore with this endeavor is how those IPs and things work.
Yeah, so we got up to about 160, 175 pieces in Miniature Market. Now we have to make this choice. I can't work in a bathroom. The boss is going to have to put about $150,000 in to get a ventilation. We almost needed a spot somewhere else. And again, out of nowhere, just like Murray fired me right off the crapper, I get escorted into, he's like, hey, I need to talk to you. Okay, I get escorted in the room. He goes, we're shutting the whole place down.
That was it?
That was it. Jim told me, he's like, yeah, we're going to shut the whole production thing down. I thought I was getting fired because at the point, again, I was not happy. I was sick all the time from resin dust. I would get there at 6 o'clock in the morning in the winter and I leave at 6 o'clock at night. I didn't see the sun for 5 days straight. Because I worked again in a bathroom with no lights or no windows. And I love working with friends. Me and Joe were clashing a little bit idea wise. I was getting upset that I was doing all the craftsman work, which again, I was hired for. He was doing all the thinking work, which again, he was hired for. But it was, we were clashing a little bit. And then I guess I heard wind that, Wizards of the Coast, or not Wizards of the Coast, WizKids were putting out a individual terrain. They put out all that pre-made terrain, not pre-primed terrain, that he told Steve that he didn't like the fact that we have a competing line and he would stop selling him WizKids products if we continued the line.
Did they really?
I think that's what I was told, like a smell in an ass. You know what I mean? Yeah. But listen, if WizKids told him that, cause I went to a convention where, when we went to Adepticon, I went with 68,000 pieces of terrain and we sold out. And he walked by the booth and told me, man, I'm doing something wrong. So. Did he really? Yes. I mean, I'm very proud of what I did with Miniature Market, just in how hard it was. And so yeah, I got ushered into the room. They told me, hey, we've got openings in the warehouse. And then I looked at Jim, who was the head of the warehouse, the head of HR. I go, I didn't know your job position was open. Cause I'm not working for $10 an hour. I'll take your job cause I can clearly do it. He goes, no, they handed me a check, which was for 5 times. It was like for 2.5 months worth of work. And I got to keep a lot of equipment and I got to keep a lot of stuff. I still did some work for Steve up until a year ago because he couldn't get it done. And he would much rather pay people to do it outside and then pay people to do it hourly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just sort of the modern economy, especially when you're a large corporation like that, it's just less expensive.
Why am I paying a guy $1,000 to make a
1099, man?
Yeah.
I'll pay you to order. I'll pay you per piece. Yeah.
Phenomenal. I love customers like that, especially when you drop it off and the check is good. I've had a lot of checks not being good.
When you left Miniature Market, you transitioned into doing casting on your own.
Yeah, I did casting. I've done casting for a couple, individual artists. Like I say, I've transitioned I make custom toy stuff now. So take 28 millimeter scale and just make it 1/18th, 1/12th. So Star Wars, G.I. Joe.
For those people, okay, perfect. That's what I'm
Star Wars and G.I. Joe. And I'm at the point now, I'm 44 years old. If I wanted to start gaming again, I don't think I could. Cause when I started gaming, everything you had to use your imagination. Now everything you can literally drop it. You could walk into a gaming store with $100 and have the exact army you wanted, all the bits, all the paint. Back then it's like, oh, I'm gonna hand make all of my, cause that was a big thing. I was hand make all of my terrain bases, not just glue a figure on a base and put some grass on it. No, I'm gonna sculpt like a cliff and have dead arm. You had to do all that yourself. Now you can go for $39.99 and buy a box of sculpted bases from GW. Smartest move they've ever done, right after changing their base scale, because that knocked out everybody who made terrain bases when they went from 25 to 25 millimeter circle to 32.
Well, that was calculated, right?
Yes, that was definitely. They were looking at Dragon Forge. They were looking at all these companies making these terrain bases. Go, well, we've got the machines. Let's do this. Change it to 32. Cause now if anybody cause 25 millimeter before that was a generic size. Now I think if somebody gets a little too big and it's a 32 millimeter, they go, well, they can come after you because what other game uses 32 millimeter bases? Done.
They're geniuses. I mean, if you look at the 3 largest companies in the industry, that all 3 of them are brilliant because all 3 of them are publicly traded. And they recognize that this quarter's bottom line is the only thing that matters
Games Workshop
until next quarter.
Games Workshop cares about 2 things, money and new players. If you're a veteran player, they do not care about you, and which is fine. I don't care.
Yeah,
you don't care. I don't care.
Yeah, they've got an 18-month turn and burn consumer life cycle. Yes. That's their model.
And as somebody who was was within a millimeter becoming a manager at a Games Workshop store, that is true.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So you interviewed locally here. We have a GW store.
Yeah, we have a GW store.
Coincidentally, I was there yesterday picking up an online order for some stuff I wanted to get that's
poor
online
bastard
exclusive.
that works there now.
But so you applied for that gig. What was that process like?
I went to
work for the big dog.
I had always wanted to.
And you were one of the final two.
There was two.
You and the current guy were flown out.
Who I'm friends with, and I'm friends with his fiance, wife, whatever.
Yeah.
Cause she worked with my wife for a while.
Yeah, she and I are also very close friends, yeah.
He is an incredible kid. I went from a cattle call where, here's the irony, since I've been everywhere and I'm old. I walked in and 3 people walked out. I've had every experience you can running a store by yourself. And I had literally 3 people walk out. Cause they're like, oh, Mike's here. Okay, I'll see you later. If you're going for a job interview to a cattle call, here's a great bit of advice. Ask the first question, no matter how stupid it is. Because you will get noticed by those people so quickly. And I asked a mundane question. Working for GW is literally standing. That's all it is. You don't order anything. You don't count the drawer down. You just deposit it. You don't make any decisions.
You literally just take the contents of the till and drop it in the safe and you don't even double check it?
Nope. The computer, most people pay with a credit card.
Okay. All right. Fine.
I mean, because most people buy it online and pick it up. Yeah. So you literally stand there and your main job is to run demos. Somebody comes in, you run a demo, and we got to play. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then, so I had 3 video interviews after that. One with the guy I met, who I had known for a while because I met him he knew me from Miniature Market because he knew me as the terrain guy. Then I met with him and his boss. Then I met with him and their boss. So I had 3 hour-long interviews. The thing that I think it came down with was I was more pragmatic, where I think the other guy was really hype.
Yeah.
Like he is the Flavor Flav of, and I'm not. I'm excited about it, but I looked at it from a purely management.
You're a hobbyist business person.
Yeah.
And
I understand it's a company. It's
and
not
this guy, whom I have affection for, he's a standard bearer, right?
Oh, he is. And and listen, I am somewhat to that too, but I couldn't do it. And looking back at with the pandemic, he was off work for 6 months. Now he has a store where nobody can game.
In fact, the way they have it set up, all of their display tables, gaming tables, demo tables, those sort of multi-purpose tables they've used those to barricade everything. So when I went to go pick up my order, I also said, hey, do you have a box of, Cadian infantry and a
He had to go look for it.
He had to go get them off the shelf and give them to me. I had to slide basically sort of, air hockey style.
Your credit card.
My credit card across so I could
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to work there is because the complete, I don't want to stand. I mean, that's 8 hours by yourself of standing there. You know how boring that's gotta be.
It's tough, I'm sure.
And then he was off work for 6 months. I mean, it was a blessing that I did not get that job because the job I'm at, went from, I work in the online industry selling frisbees and disc golf. My business exploded 10 times. I mean, I went from, $10,000 a month to $40,000 a month, and being a one person, I could keep up with it. I do do everything. So I don't know what it would be like if I had gotten that job. Again, I would have probably, the way I am, I'd have probably have quit by now. I'm about an 18-month person.
Or you would have been hustling online, getting your paycheck while.
No, here's the great story from that. A person we both know shows up to the interview. Dude, cock at a walk, strutting in like he's Charles Bronson in fucking, one of those movies start with Dead.
Yeah, see, all I can think about now is Gary Oldman as Drexel talking, in True Romance. Look at got a fucking Charlie Bronson here.
Yeah. It was, he walked in like a character in a Tarantino movie.
Maybe I shouldn't have gone to this interview.
And I'm sitting there talking to one of our friends, Dan the Lesser.
Oh yeah, no, neat kid, yeah.
Yeah, and, he's an adult now.
Yeah, I don't call him the Lesser anymore.
I did, and
apparently he fucking hates that.
Yeah, well, who cares? I'm talking to him. He's one of the people like, I'm not going to get this job now. I'm like, I'm sorry. This guy walks in, struts. I'm just sitting there calmly. I can just sit there calmly. I don't have to boast. I don't have to do anything. I'm just sitting there calmly looking at some of these people that are walking in. Some people clearly there because their unemployment required them to go to a job interview. I had no idea what they were walking into. This guy comes in and I ask a question, somebody asks a question, he asks a question. I run an online painting company and do a lot of YouTube videos, and I'm very prominent of that. What's GW's stance on me owning a painting company? They go, we'd rather you not. We'd rather you not work a company out of our company. Now, if you can do that completely separately and your clients never come here, that's great. He slammed down his resume and walked out.
Wow.
I hope his mom was waiting outside because it would have been a long call from wherever she had to drive from. So yeah, that's pretty much my whole hobby, is like my whole history in the hobby.
But then you transitioned from doing toy soldiers to doing
toys.
Toys.
I got it into the, what people call, art toys, art vinyl toys, bootleg toys. It's basically taking, when you'd walk into a store, you'd see a Star Wars figure on a card. Well, imagine that Star Wars figure I got into it because I found a guy called the Suck Lord out of New York. He had this thing called the Gay Empire figure. It's basically two stormtroopers on a card. It's the classic stormtrooper double pose on the card where they're firing each other, except they're pink, they're shirtless, they have cod pieces and bow ties. And the figure he had sculpted was the Power of the Force figure with a giant cock piece on in pink. And it was called the Gay Empire because if they were pink, they had to be gay. And I bought a figure from him at a convention and I turned it over. And the thing that changed me in my business philosophy is he wrote on the back of it, "You're an asshole if you buy this." And I'm like, well, this guy's got it going on. Yeah. This guy's awesome. So, and I found, and through Instagram, which I believe now is how I game and how I show my painting off, is through, I've met probably hundreds of artists through Instagram who do anything from where they mash up G.I. Joe and Star Wars to where they make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in every pose, or where they make horribly grotesque figures. I have a favorite artist. His name is Edwin Salas. He makes everything out of wood. He lives in South Carolina. He makes marionettes, but he makes these incredible bootleg figures out of wood. They look like a 3-year-old made them, but that's his style. Again, I've gone from exquisitely painted GW miniatures to now I want the crappiest looking DIY thing I can get. Cause again, I can walk into a gaming store and buy all the paint and plastic and shit. I can buy perfection. I don't want perfection anymore. I want heart in my gaming. And that's why gaming lost me, cause there's no heart in it now. You roll in, it's guys with 3,000 points worth of plastic gray fighting against 3,000 points of plastic gray, and the game takes 14 hours and they're spilling Mountain Dew all over everything, and they don't care about what they're just pieces they're moving around.
It's mechanics and not art.
Yes, it's mechanics and that's why the toy industry has kind of changed me from that. And I'm not talking about Hasbro and conventional paint. I'm still talking about resin made toys. I mean, all my toys are made in resin, all my terrain. For those, I make play sets out of wood. I don't make them out of, I make them out of wood. I'm sitting out there cutting, carving, sanding, figuring out how to make movable doors, shiftable, I'm making a spaceport now where the top lifts off and you have all the interior, like the episode 4, Tatooine, where the Falcon blasts out of it and does the great launch scene that, sparked our imagination as a kid. I'm making one of those now. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet, but it's incredible. All the doors move. It's like a Fisher Price. When I grew up, we had Fisher Price, wooden base, wooden barn doors, and went moo.
And this is for your own personal passion?
This is for my own personal passion. So when I go now to toy shows.
But for money, you'll do this for people.
Absolutely. If you have $1,000, I will make this for you. I go to toy shows now and I have 2 tables, and most of I sell resin terrain and repainted figures, repainted custom, toys. But I'll put my spaceport. I've got a G.I. Joe headquarters that was like the old plastic one, but it's 3 feet long and 2 feet tall and got every accessory you could possibly imagine to it. It's made out of wood. But it looks like it's made out. It looks like a Fisher Price toy. It doesn't look like it's made in a factory. I don't want that. That's the whole thing with 3D printing now, and companies are going to this more and more.
You mean it's taking more art out of the process?
No, it's doing both. It's taking more art of the process, but it's also making art accessible to people. I think this is the way gaming will go. I think you're going to have Games Workshop, Privateer Press as the big, and I don't even know if Privateer Press is going to make it. You're going to have Games Workshop as the big dog who will make the all-encompassing box because people want a game that's I can buy that box and play. Let's do it. I can spend $120 and we can play. Let's go. Historical miniatures, what I got into, you had to think. I got to buy a book and read it to figure out what armies I need and how the army is built. And then I got to go on a rack of 15 millimeter miniatures and pick them out. Oh, that's the wrong Shaco. That's 1809 instead of 1815. What are you doing? So you can't do that. Now everybody wants it. We're living in an Amazon world. I can order toilet paper and have it here in about 10 minutes. Everybody wants, if it doesn't come in a box and it doesn't come all together where you can pop it out of the box and play it in 10 minutes, I think it's going to go by the wayside. But I also think that small companies are going to be able to produce what they want. Because before, if you wanted to have a model company, you had to get you either sculpted it or somebody sculpted it. You sent it to a caster. They made a metal mold. They made a master mold. They made production molds. And then you had to wait 6 months. And you've spent $2,000, $3,000. And that's on the cheap side for what we were doing. You never make a steel mold. I mean, that's what, Tim's company, they don't have steel molds. Everything's hand cast resin or hand cast metal. Now, if you've got figures and you want to start a miniature company, get a 3D printer. Or a lot of people are they're just selling the STL files.
Well, that's the way to go, right? Because then
you don't have to produce anything. All you got to do is keep sculpting.
Well, the technology is not strong enough, right? It's not viable, I think, to do a printer farm successfully.
You can, and there's a bunch of companies that do. But yeah, right, 2 years from now the 3D printer we used at Miniature Mart was $3,800. Right now you can get that for $2,400 and it's way better. So you're like, I'm going to spend $5,000 to get 5 figures made. I'm going to spend $5,000 on 2 3D printers that can make 24 figs at a time. Yeah, it takes 4 hours to make 24 figs, but I got 2 of them. Now I can make 48. I can make, as long as you're getting
96 miniatures at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right.
You sell them for $10 a piece. You made $960 at the end of the day. Even after the cost of the printer pays for itself in 3 sell-throughs. The resin costs hardly anything. Those economics seem to work great for everybody. $1,000 a day, I make 30. I can, if you hustled, and I think companies are learning how to do that. Small guys are getting out there through Instagram, through TikTok, and that's how I find artists. I peruse Instagram nonstop. It's my medium. I don't go on Facebook. I sit there and look at Instagram nonstop and find so much cool stuff. And I found so many guys who were doing, when I worked for Miniature Mart, we're always looking for 3D sculptor artists because we could just print, send us, we had 300 outstanding sculpts that we had never gotten to, that we have the files to. They were incredible. But now I think if you, Mike Broder, wanted to start a miniature company, I got a 3D artist. He charged me $200 a sculpt for doing a 3D sculpt, which is cheap. You could start a miniature company and just sell the files
I don't want a miniature company.
No, but
I should not put this out in the universe. But what I want is I want to go to the store and I want to buy a box of, say, Astra Militarum Guardsmen. And then I want to take those sprues to a 3D sculptor and
have them scan them.
And I want to say, here's what I want you to do. I just want the left hand in a facsimile chainsaw. And I just want you to change it enough that we're not going to get sued. And then I want that digital file printable so that I can download that file and I can print it from my own resin printer.
Yeah.
So I don't use this stupid filament bullshit and get the dumb lines. And I want my own resin printer, and then I just want to be able to do my own custom bits that I know will be a fit and size. And then I want some genius to come in and just sculpt a little divot right in that dead center so I don't even have to take my awl or pen and scratch it. I can just put my drill right in that motherfucker.
Tools. Not everything is snapped together anymore. Everything now is snapped together.
No, which is terrible because the conversion, that's the thing.
There's no conversion anymore.
That's the thing about what you and I love about the old school. I mean, if you look behind you, I have all of these little bits and trays and things. Because I just want to build a unique thing.
And for you, it was just the conversion. You didn't care about painting it.
Yeah, and I paint more than I used to. I
started a painting class at your store so you would paint. And I loved it. I'd call it, listen, I work 10 hours. Like, oh yeah, let's show up every Thursday. And I'd sit there and people would walk by me looking, cause like, oh, it was a great painting. He's an idiot. But I slowly but surely we'd have 4 or 5 guys stop by. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, just a bullshit and paint.
Yeah, you one time, and to your OCD ass, bought the plastic that you paint on pipe wrenches for grip. And like, this was back when Army Painter came out with their floor polish. Their
dip, yeah.
And so you put...
I stand by dip method.
Oh, I love it. And amazingly, a lot of really big time painters use it a lot. Cause it shades and gives you really great grit and depth.
Yeah, there's just there's some finishing techniques.
Yeah, not the GW. I paint all the lines on everything and it's done. But you were doing the dip method. I love it. You took a model and you would grip coat it the pliers and you're swinging, cause it said vigorously swing, and afterwards you're in the back room and you're swinging it and the grip came off and the model went almost through the wall. You threw the pliers. And it was
so pissed.
And again, that was back in the day where you were an angry young man.
Now the deal is what you do is you take a roofing nail and you hot glue it to the bottom, and then you put it in your drill.
And you hit it once. Yes.
Perfect. It's absolutely.
Again, kids, you have to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. Well, but now here's the
I bet they make a widget for that.
Well, here's the cool thing nowadays though, is that if you want to do it yourself, there are great people out there. Black Magic Craft is just one of them. Wylock is another, depending on what your speed is. There are people out there who do phenomenal tutorials, and walkthroughs on how to do that stuff yourself.
And that's when Instagram is an incredible tool, because I follow a bunch of GW painters, a bunch of guys who are into the more gritty John Blanche style, toy painters, toy artists. I pull everything from it. When I started painting miniatures, I started doing overtly weathered, chipped. Nobody was doing that kind of at the time, because I had taken that from military modeling. Doing, oversprays, masking, salt method, chipping.
There are just an amazing number of techniques that traditional modeling and railroad hobbyist people use.
And it slowly worked its way in. Yep. And GW was a big proponent of that. They helped that out a lot with their Forge World books, because they would have a book that didn't only have GW brand shit in it, because at the time they didn't make everything. Now they would never make, oh my God, I don't think they'd ever make a book like that. Everything is color coded, so you can just A, B, C. It's like paint by numbers, which I love, but not on my miniature.
They've done what they can to make the hobby accessible.
Oh yeah, which
in you and your ilk are doing what
I'm
you can
trying to do. We've, like I say, GW is like we're edgy. We're edgy. I'm like, you're not edgy. You're Green Day. I'm Fear or Black Flag. You're not edgy at all. I swear to God, September has ended. Let's move on, But,
I mean, I can't think of a better place to end an interview than by you shitting on Green Day.
Oh God. My wife's favorite albums, when I met my wife, she was, I love Green Day. The first 2 Green Day albums after that, Jesus Christ.
I want to have you on.
And I've seen them live in concert. They're a phenomenal band in concert. Go to Amazon. It's free. Decline of Western Civilization, Volume 1. You make it through that entire thing. That's all you need, kids. It's all you need.
So, Mike, if people want to reach out and they want to see your work or they want to follow you, obviously you said Instagram.
Instagram is my biggest thing. It's STC_Forge. So STC_Forge. And I post pictures. I post tutorials. I do a lot of stories. I promote I use it mostly to promote my friends who are doing incredible stuff and my stuff to an extent. But yeah, I do that. It's got a link to my Etsy, my eBay, my big cartels. I got like 4 or 5 stores that basically all sell the same thing.
Well, you hustle and you have a big personality. I think that you would be great with your own YouTube channel doing demos.
Coming soon. Let's say I've got a kid in college, a kid getting out of college, this week we spent Monday at Boy Scouts, Wednesday at marching band with 8th grade night. Thursday, my daughter started her first day of a job. So she's going to find out who this FICA guy is and why the fuck he's taking all her money. And
yeah, I love it when young people get jobs and have to start paying taxes.
Oh my God.
It's like my favorite thing. Because they look at their paycheck and they're like, what the actual fuck? What is going on here?
Vote. Somebody vote for somebody.
All right. Well, Mike Wood, it has been a blast.
I know.
It's been great seeing you.
I'm glad I got to do it. I'm glad you got your, get a couple in. I didn't want you, to be the first one out of the box.
No, and the thing that sucks about this endeavor too is that people will go to your first episode when you're bad, and they should be listening to listen to the Phil Kilgore episode first.
Yes.
Don't go to the beginning when you're starting a new podcast.
But as with everything, I follow a guy called Gary V. If you don't follow him as a creative person, he's a businessman, but he is so in tune with artists and creatives. He always says, don't create, document. And that's all I do. I don't try to create anything I don't want to create, and I just document the hell out of everything I do.
That's brilliant advice.
I'm slow.
He's the wine guy, right?
He is the wine guy. Yeah. And listen, I've watched every one of his wine podcasts from the time where he's sitting there with his dumb New Jersey hair to now I follow him on Instagram. When the COVID hit, he got me through the first 3 weeks because he's like, fuck it, I'm going to do a live show from my empty office and you call in. Like, this guy runs $100 million company. He's like, call in. Anybody wants to talk about anything. And that's, got me through 2 weeks of COVID, was working and listening to his podcast of people like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, but he's very good with creatives. He has probably not a creative bone in his body, but he's very good with creatives. And being creative in all these games and everything do is just an outlet for creativity. This podcast that you do is a great outlet for your creativity.
I just like to talk.
Yeah, but you're good at it.
Well, thanks, Mike.
I mean, the political podcast will come after this.
Oh, so I did. We'll talk about that off the air. I am not going to do political podcasting.
Oh, I'm not
going to pick a fucking side.
Which is great about you because you have a side, but you are dead in the middle.
Yeah. Well,
which everybody should be. There's no right or wrong. I mean, there's right or wrong, but God damn, I hate these people.
Well, all this part.
Turn this off before I start.
There will be no politics. Mike Wood. We can find you at STC _Forge.
I wasn't smart enough to get it all in one line.
_Forge at the, on the Instagram and the Facebooks. Mike,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Oh, not a problem.
Why We Game is a production of the Influence Foundation. All rights reserved. Audio editing by Brodor. Music by Owen Godwin.